Cloud. There we go. Welcome to the Arborist Call for the 2nd of November. Happy Halloween to everybody. We'll start off with node updates from ECC and ZF. Then we'll hear about some of the research implementation work that's going on. We'll open up for any announcements that anybody or any news that people want to share. And then we'll talk a little bit about planning the NU5 retrospective and a little bit about network upgrade planning with a view towards NU6. For anybody who doesn't know what this call is about, this is an Arborist call. It's a bi-weekly call alternating between early at 3 p.m. UTC and this late slot at 9 p.m. UTC. And Zcash protocol contributors congregate here to share updates, discuss timelines and processes, check in on research and development work that's going on, and most importantly, identify blockers and help solve any issues that we have a mutual interest in. The idea of these calls is to make Zcash protocol development more accessible to the Zcash community and to provide transparency about the work that we're doing. Anybody can join these calls. You don't have to be invited. If you want to join, then you can register by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. And if you want to present something, just drop us an email at arboristcall@cfnd.org. Let me just check to see whether we have yet received any emails to arboristcall@cfnd.org. No, we have never received any emails. Nobody ever wants to present anything. It's very kind of disheartening, but there. Other ways you can get involved: you can apply for a Zcash community grant. You can join the Zcash R&D Discord, where a lot of discussion about these sort of topics takes place, or you can join the exciting and ever spicy discussions on the Zcash community forum. And I appreciate you can't click on a Zoom window or on a YouTube video window to see these or to access these links. So just point your browser at zcasharborist.org and you'll find them all there. Right, let's start off with core team updates and Electric Coin Company. Who is in the hot seat from ECC?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Okay, since 2 weeks ago, we officially declared the end of emergency mode, since all three of the wallets that use our wallet SDK ship new versions using wallet SDK 2.0, and all of their users now have access to their funds again. So after much work, those users are all in the clear. Along the way, we've been working a lot on iterations of the Zashi user interface. Anybody who wants to help beta test and identify user experience issues in the secret Zashi beta testers club, just reach out. I'm not really aware of anything we've done on Zcash at the engineering level. What I've been working on Zcash at the product level is helping others take over the role of maintainer of full nodes on behalf of CEXs and mining pools and things like that. The overall theme is that ECC is decentralizing Zcash and focusing ECC, we call it. The focus ECC part is about make it so we can just do proof of stake, the SDK, and Zashi. And the decentralized Zcash part turns out to take a whole lot of work. We're spending a lot of time helping other people gain more control over things that we used to do since we were the only organization that existed 8 years ago. Like the Z.Cash website, maintaining a full node on behalf of CEXs, and several other things. Anything else? Anything I'm missing? Any questions? Okay, that's the summary of the last 2 weeks of Electric Coin Company's work.
Thank you. Congratulations on exiting emergency mode. Any questions for ECC? Okay, let's move on to Zcash Foundation. I'm not sure who's in the hot seat today. Is it?
That's me today.
Tior, there we go.
So yeah, hi, I'm Tior. I'm the release manager for the next Zebra release 1.4.0, which is going to be out next week sometime. So we have a lot of quite significant changes coming in our next release. Some of the major changes to our features and functionality are that our mining RPCs are now available in production builds. So we fixed some final bugs in those RPCs and stabilized that Rust feature. So as of 1.4.0, the latest build of Zebra will contain all of those RPCs. There's about 12 of them, but the major one is the get block template RPC. The other thing we've done following along from the Zcash changes in their last release is that we have embedded the sapling and the sprout verification parameters in the ZebraD binary. So that means that you don't need to download separate parameter files. Whether you're using Zcash or Zebra, you can delete those files after you upgrade to the relevant releases. And yeah, that simplifies things because there's no separate download and no separate website that can fail, those kinds of things. So those are the two major functional changes. We also have some deprecation that we're considering doing or have done. So the deprecation that we've done is that now that we're publishing Rust crates, our public documentation is available on docs.rs. So we are not updating our doc.zebra.zcashfoundation.org website anymore. With our published API documentation, look at docs.rs for that, or look at our internal docs, which still exist at doc.internal. Doc-internal. All these details are in the changelog. So I'll post a link to these if people want to follow up on that. And then the other thing that we're thinking of changing, but we haven't changed yet, is that we've got a lot of Docker tags, and we're not sure how many of them are used and how many of those tags are actually useful and something we want to support. So we're considering simplifying things down to just having a tag that has the full version number in it if you want to stay on that exact release, and then a latest tag. So currently we have about 7 per release, which is quite a lot. So yeah, those are the things that we are planning on doing. I'll just post a link in the chat to our changelog so that if you want to look at the details of that, you can check those out. So yeah, please let us know if you want specific Docker tags that say stay on the NU5 version of Zebra or something like that. And that's it from us for the moment.
Thank you, Tior. Any questions relating to Zebra? Okay, let's move on to hear from, I'm guessing, Nathan, but any updates regarding trailing finality?
Yes, so let's see, since 2 weeks ago, we've been at work sort of updating the book. Let me send a link here. Sadly, we didn't get to the goal I wanted to by this meeting, which is that if you go to that book, all of the content is roughly self-consistent, and it sort of introduces Crosslink, which is a main component of our design that we're working on. But we still have a few pending changes. So if you glance at it today, you may see some sections that are inconsistent with Crosslink. and that should be all ready by Monday, I think. So in addition to that, we've continued working on the two main security arguments for the crosslink construction. So those are for liveness and safety. And we've also done some road mapping. So after this goal on Monday of having a release of the book, it's all self-consistent and introduces crosslink. That Monday version links to all of the crosslink definition, which is over on HackMD. So the next big piece we're gonna work on, oh, yes, sorry about the URL paste bug. The next big piece we wanna work on is merging all of the content. So instead of having the book and a HackMD, we're gonna get it all in one document. And then after that, we have a lot of like analysis, security analysis goals. And as we are working towards those, we're also developing a simulator, which is a Python code base that we can use to run simulations of like different security scenarios. And that's the next big milestone we're aiming for.
I can talk about how far on we are with the simulator, but carry on with what you were saying first.
Oh yeah, well, I think I was done. That was sort of the main status update. We have this release coming out on Monday that's sort of like the first coherent introduction to crosslink. The next milestone is to integrate that all into one document, and then the milestone beyond that is to start improving the simulator with multiple different kinds of security analysis. And Dara, do you want to talk more about the simulator updates?
Yep. So I think by the time of the last Arborist call, we just had a framework for message passing between nodes. Now we have some abstractions for crosslink and Snap and Chat, which is the protocol it was originally based on. They take two protocols. So one is a best chain protocol like Zcash or Bitcoin, and the other is a BFT, so Byzantine fault tolerance protocol. And they combine those, and you get out a finalized ledger and a dynamically available ledger. As far as the simulator is concerned, I've written some abstractions for the best chain protocol, and I'm currently, there's a draft PR up for the BFT protocol. And the next thing to do, I think, is to implement a specific BFT protocol called Streamlit, which is designed for to be easy to explain and teach. So that's also quite easy to implement.
Oh, and I wish I had done this at the very beginning, just in case people don't have context, but so this project we're calling Trailing Finality Layer. The goal of it is to propose an upgrade to the Zcash protocol that would transition it from a proof of work based system, very similar to Bitcoin, to a hybrid system that would retain that proof of work element, but it would add a proof of stake sort of layer that is causing the transactions and blocks coming out of proof of work to become finalized. And finalized transactions can't be rolled back, which provides a lot of benefits for usability, but also building various protocol things on top of, especially like bridges or DEX integrations or things like that.
Yeah, and I think we already went over this in the previous Arborist call, I think. But the tricky thing about the analysis is to make sure that you're not getting the just the weaker of the security properties of the BFT protocol and the best chain protocol. Yeah, and we think we've achieved that.
Cool. Any questions on any of that? If not, let's move on to Frost. I'm not sure who's doing the update.
It's me as well, but I'm just reading out what a summary from the Frost team because they're away today. So for Frost, the Frost audit report has been published, and I'll just go find a link for that. They're still working on cleanups for the Frost Rust release candidate, and they started working on adding network communication to the Frost demos. And that's it for what I've got for Frost.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, we're rattling through it today. Right, next up is...
Where do we find the research report, the audit report?
I will find a link and post it in the chat.
Thank you.
I believe it's on NCC's website. Yeah, if you go to research.nccgroup.com, you'll find public report Zcash Frost security assessment four things down.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Zcash shielded assets.
So that's gonna be me. I think Vivek is asleep at those hours.
Yeah, we're not used to having somebody to talk about ZSAs on this time slot call. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm right now based in Pennsylvania for logistical, mercurial reasons. I don't know how to say it. Martial reasons. Short version is we have been working on trying to get the ZSAs back to function, but this time on Zebra, because as you know, we almost accomplished everything we needed on Zcash, and we did a demo, but moving to Zebra, there's missing pieces that we need to catch up, to get back to developing and having those transactions actually circulate and function. So there's been conversations. We actually started tighter conversations with the foundation, so that was good. And there's a question of coordinating who does what and where it's going. What Kedit is doing right now is writing a kind of testing platform to issue transactions that have a sort of pseudo V6. The V6 being envisioned here is one that contains ZSAs. So we added the ability to issue those transactions that have ZSAs in them, and try to run all that on Zebra itself. So it's not really a wallet, but it has some of the functionality of picking up nodes and creating a transaction in the right format, and handing it over for a network to try to accept. So where the interaction with the foundation is on trying to run a test net that is not the test net that is live and running, but something that we can actually use for our ZSA work, because things right now are kind of hard coded in Zebra for testnet. And maybe I'm reiterating also here that we are very like we +1 the requests or the asks to try to have the Zebra code be able to launch networks that are not the test net for better testing. But the outcome of what we're doing is actually useful also for orchard transactions. There'll be a possibility to test transactions on Zebra with the code that we're providing. So we're doing the work for ZSA, but actually we had to do it also for orchard.
Excellent.
Thank you. We had to do it because otherwise we can't progress for asset swap that we started already designing, and there's a few deliverables that are hinging on just continuing to write and being able to test what we write. You'll get more details from Vivek, and on the forum we want to post exactly what we did. There's a question of well, that work hasn't been foreseen, but we're doing it anyway because it's necessary. So how do we make it work with the deliverables we have? So we have a post coming up to explain what we're doing and trying to do. But this is it's actually looking good, the progress there. Funnily, I was quoted, I don't know where, describing how much of a breeze it is to work on Rust rather than Zcash D. It's funny the snippets they pick up, but it's true. Like the engineers are happy. There is a question that Jack, you suggested that I put here, which is what is with these three groups trying to coordinate between what's going on in Libra Zcash and in Orchard and ZSA and those and Zebra and all these efforts. It's not fully clear to us where does NU6 work start and who picks up the movement to have those V6 transactions being discussed and forged. So right now we're building these sort of dummy transactions that we call V6 because that's the next integer in line, but we discussed it with everybody, but the formal NU6, it's not fully clear, like what's the target and where it goes. I'm happy to hear what people have in mind for that.
Tior.
Yeah, so as one of the zip editors, I might be able to help with that question. So currently what we have at the moment is a bunch of zips that might change the transaction format that are in various statuses everywhere from, I think, approved all the way through to draft and then maybe ideas in people's heads. So what happens closer to NU6 is we look at all of those zips that are ready to go, and then we bring together, then we look to ECC and ZF to help gauge community sentiment and decide what is going to be Zcash NU6. And then when we know what's going to be in NU6, then it's the role of the zip editors to create a transaction format that supports everything that's actually going to be in NU6. So there's kind of I don't know, that's maybe 3 steps or 4-step process before we know what the final state is going to be. But definitely bringing together all those separate zips is the role of the zip editors, because we're the ones who know what all the new fields need to be. And then I guess after that happens, then it's over to the implementation team. So the engineers at ECC and ZF will then be adding those extra fields into their implementations. So I think that's what's going to happen, but people who've done this more times than me, please feel free to jump in and correct.
I mean, that sounds like a reasonable process to me. It certainly sounds like a more decentralized process than how we used to do it, which is basically a bunch of ECC engineers doing it. Yeah, and this is better.
In the spirit of ideas coming from decentralized places, I want to start putting this as a topic also in these calls. I think we should start thinking about what are the features that we're adding in ZSA that help us make Zcash robust against future attacks from regulators or people looking at platforms with strong privacy as the devil. And we have a lot of ideas at Kedit. It's frankly, it became much more of a silent, stressing point now that some of us are working day and night at detecting crypto transactions on Ethereum and Bitcoin related to the current affairs back in Israel, Palestine, and what's going on there. So we're at the same time wearing the hat of oh my God, bad things are happening with crypto as we speak, and it's very, very easy to see one or two transactions that would be coming on the Zcash network that would tarnish a lot of work that otherwise is pushing just stronger privacy for fully legit uses. So all this to say that I think the time to figure out what goes on into NU6 to show that those elements are not welcome in this community, the time is now. I don't have any strong suggestions because it's super, super tricky to figure out what exactly we need to do. And because we don't want to weaken the core of neither of Zcash or of ZSA. It's we want to remain with a strong core, but I think we need to have some working group on this. I'm happy to take the lead on this particular topic because I have taken the lead on this particular topic outside of Zcash. We have a ZK proof policy event in Washington at the end of the month on November 30, where I'm trying to figure out, nobody's going to give a green light to anything, but what is the sentiment and how can we try to walk that balance again without abdicating to the core vision of what Zcash is bringing.
I have opinions. So I've been pretty disappointed about the quality of technical proposals for you might say compromises on sort of goals like preventing money laundering or whatever, or terrorist financing or whatever. Because I think if you look at the history of proposals like that in academic papers on things like privacy pools recently, they have a lot of flaws and they really do reduce privacy by quite a lot. To the extent that it's possible to achieve those goals at all, we're going to need better ideas to do it.
I agree, and these are the side conversations I'm having in the various meetings we have are trying to figure out what are those better ideas. Aviv Zohar, who's a co-founder at Kedit, has been starting to work on ideas exactly on kind of like how to have the consensus of the entire community on who do we dox, like who do we allow to dox, should we be faced with like a misuse that we know how to characterize? It's very tricky, but it has to be discussed, and we don't want to be faced with oh well, the current immediate feature that we have right now is this, so use this, like be forced to use features that are actually too revealing, like giving viewing keys or things like that. So I'm anyone that has like wants to be engaged in like tech ideas on this, I'm really keen. And anyone who's around DC on November 30, you're going to see a lot of progress in zero knowledge in general, but in particular, there's going to be a bunch of conversations on this topic. Shameless plug.
Cool. I'll add that topic to our future list of discussion topics, John. I'll coordinate with you when's a good time to schedule that for, see if we can get Aviv. Maybe it might be interesting to see if we get Paul Brigner from ECC to join that discussion as well, because he obviously has a lot of experience of talking to these folks. Any questions for John? Tior.
Yeah, so I haven't been part of the conversations about Zebra and testnets on Zebra, mainly due to time zones. I think I'm at the opposite time zone to you at UTC +10. But so I'm not sure if this has already been said, but currently what's supported in Zebra is forking the current testnet. So you can add another network upgrade to the current testnet with all of the things you need for a network upgrade, like whatever it's called, the consensus branch ID and an activation height. And that's something that's quite easy to implement in Zebra. If you want to start an entirely separate network from the start, then as you probably know from your meetings with the other ZF engineers, that use case hasn't been on our list of things to design towards. So we'd have to schedule that work in over the next, I don't know, a few months, along with the other things that we're doing. So I guess my question would be, would it be enough for you to fork the current testnet? Or do you actually need to be able to run a completely different testnet from Genesis? Because, the amount of development effort on our side is quite different.
So I wouldn't be the right person to answer this, but I appreciate that you're asking. That the previous the meeting we had actually today discussed a little bit about it, and we're basically what we're saying is any solution that's good enough to start testing new formats of transactions, we take. We can't be like maintainers of like a fork of Zebra just for that. So I think we'll find something that is reasonably like not too much work on your end and meets our criteria, but this is like beyond my scope of knowledge.
I mean, all previous network upgrades have been tested on forks of testnet. And that includes Sapling and Orchard. So if it's not possible for ZSAs, then I would be asking what is different about ZSAs. But I think it is possible.
The main difference is that when you do those forks, this is kind of like the main thing that the Zcash ecosystem is pushing towards. So you have like everybody aligned. But if we were to do forks of ZSA on our side that don't interact, then we need to.
Oh, that's right. So it might have misunderstood. I was just saying that for those forks, we only needed to fork the public testnet, but my argument was that in general, you just need to be able to fork a testnet. So if you fork the public one in order to create a private one, then that should be sufficient.
Yeah, that's effectively the thing we've done in the past is like make custom binaries of the full nodes that, you know, at some predetermined height go off and activate the rules for testing purposes, and then just only give those binaries to the people who are doing the testing. So it's completely separate.
Yeah, I heard something to that effect in the conversation, but again, this is it's lost on me, so let's not even attempt.
And we did have a private fork of testnet at one point. I can't remember what that was for. No, I can't remember.
Pure.
Yeah, so maybe it's not helpful to go into the details here, but what we can do on the ZF side is come up with a minimal set of instructions for all of the things that you need to change to fork a testnet. And then I will pass that through our other engineers who are already in that meeting, and that's how we can get that information to you.
All right. If I have this correctly, the ideal thing we're asking for is actually already in your issues. There's like a detailed description of what would allow to issue a sort of local testnet that's right immediately available locally without any networking stack. But I'm again that's we can take this.
Yeah, Tior, this is kind of relitigating a meeting that we've already had today. So let's take this. Let's take this. I think you should catch up with Peely and the rest of the team. Any other questions on this topic? Okay. Is there anybody?
I think I remember what the private testnet was for. It was for some reason the public testnet had stalled, and we were testing a fix. I think that was it. Anyway, carry on.
Oh yeah, because didn't somebody point a whole load of hardware miners at testnet and then bump up the difficulty?
Yeah, and there was there was a rule that on testnet. It was testnet specific that was quite problematic and needed to remove it. Anyway, carry on.
Okay. Do we have anybody on from the Sustainability Funds project? I don't think we do. So we can move on. And we can invite open announcements. Does anybody have any news or announcements that they'd like to share? If so, speak up. If not, we can move on. So, ECC has exited emergency mode, which is fantastic news, and also means that we can start talking about planning the NU5 retrospective. So I think two things I wanted to discuss briefly were, first of all, do we want to do that retrospective on what I assume will be multiple arborist calls, or do we want to have a separate schedule separate meeting or meetings to do it? And then secondly, what topics do we want to cover? So I guess the first question, does anybody have any strong feelings against doing the NU5 retrospective during or after the normally scheduled business on arborist calls?
So I guess the disadvantage of that is that it makes the call longer, because we have this bunch of stuff to get through, and then we do a retrospective thing. So that's going to be a very long call and might need an accessibility break in the middle at least. Whereas if it's a separate call, then it's shorter.
Yeah, I'm assuming that we wouldn't try and do it all on a single call, that we would split it up into multiple topics. The other thing we could do is we could on a couple of arborist calls skip a lot of the main updates and just say, right, this Arborist call is going to be focused on NU5 Retro, and just do a very quick, is there any important business to be raised or any important announcements that need to be raised up front? And just rely on the fact that we effectively have 2 Arborist calls a month. So having skipping or having 4 weeks between updates doesn't seem to be too unreasonable to me. But interested in hearing others' thoughts on that.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay. What I might do then is I might look at scheduling the Arborist call in 4 weeks, so during this late time slot, to be the first NU5 retro focused, and we can target that. Nate.
Yeah, I just wanted to request if like the meeting is an hour and a half or longer, maybe it would be nice to have like a 10-minute break in the middle. Because for really focused meetings like that, sometimes a break helps me. Is
Totally.
that something we could accommodate?
Yes, I totally agree that going for having lengthy meetings without bio breaks is difficult. And secondly, again, to reiterate, I think that if we split up, we figure out what topics we want to discuss, and then chop it up into bite-sized chunks rather than trying to eat the entire elephant in one sitting. I think we might have a better chance of avoiding having massively long meetings. So certainly my goal would be to chunk it up. Strad.
Yeah, and just on that point, I know from my experience in past retrospective meetings that there are often things that will come up that cut across a bunch of different topic areas. So if we're trying to do it in this way, we break it up into pieces, we will need to be conscious of limiting how much we go down on tangents to focus getting through individual topics. And also, I think there may be a benefit to, in addition to having those more focused ones, maybe having one, I don't know whether it make more sense at the beginning or the end of a more like of one that enables more looking into those cross-cutting issues, if that makes sense. Because I feel like, yeah, topic-focused ones are not the right space to discuss those, but I think it is important that we have a space to discuss those.
Yeah, so that probably makes sense to be the last of these meetings, because then we will know what things we want to discuss in that way.
Yeah, if we're while we're in the meetings doing the more in-depth things and we identify things that are cross-cutting, we can be like, okay, we're not discussing this now, we'll cut this off, but we'll put a pin in it for and bring it up at that more cross-cutting meeting.
To that end, I'm about to share a Google Doc, an NU5 retrospective Google Doc with Zuko, Dara, Strad, Chris, Sean, Philly, Tior, Marek, Alfredo, Conrado, Arya, Jonathan Kedit, and Nate. And if we need to add anybody to that, let me know. But it's literally just a bare bones Google Doc. All it's got at the moment is a list of 3 topics, and we can add to that. We can put comments and notes and whatnot in it. So I'm literally hitting send now. You should all receive that into your inboxes shortly. And yeah, I guess the best way to describe that topic, that sort of topic, Strat, is kind of meta topics.
Yeah.
Or cross discipline. So I'll just add that now. Nate.
Yeah, I just wanted to request that we don't skip the sort of normal status update agenda for too long. So like if new content keeps coming up in retrospective, we might be tempted to keep chewing through that. And I just don't want to starve out the status updates, because I think they're always pretty valuable. So maybe skipping one session or two sessions might be okay, but once we get to like more than a month, I start getting nervous about losing momentum or awareness of all the different things that are going on.
Well, my thinking was to kind of have alternating. So I feel like the earlier Arborist call slot, it feels like everybody who's on this call is able to attend that call as well. Would that be, is there anybody here who cannot attend the 3 p.m. UTC Arborist call?
I cannot until the end of November.
Okay.
I cannot, because it's 1 a.m. for me.
Good point. Okay, so if we do the regular updates during the earlier slot, we will have people from both organizations on, and as well from Kedit and from Equilibrium, who are based in Europe. We will miss out on Tior and Strad for at least for Strad while he's wherever he is. But I think that's an acceptable compromise, because we still have people from their organizations on those calls. So I'm kind of being a little bit fuzzy here. Basically, what I'm thinking about is we keep the updates on the earlier time slot calls, so we have the maximum gap between updates would be 4 weeks, and then we use the later calls for the to focus on the NU5 retrospective topics.
I don't know what the answer to this is, but is there anyone missing on this call who would want to be involved in the retrospective and can't because of time zones?
Right.
I don't have an answer to that question, but mine directly follows from this.
Short answer is I don't know. I think there are some ZF people who need to be involved in the retrospectives who don't normally attend these calls, and these later time slot calls, Peely being a good example. But so we can chat. I'll chat internally to see if that's something that they can accommodate, and or provide notes that their colleagues can bring to the meeting. What about from the ECC side? It's the only person who I think might have input is Sean.
I don't think Sean is here at the moment.
No, he's not.
But
He's not on this
Sean's
call.
time zone is the same as Chris and others in Central America. By Central America, Central US.
Central US.
And by Central US, I mean mid where? I don't know.
Mountain time.
I was only just today researching Native American names for the American continents for a story that I'm writing. It's fascinating.
I'm gonna resist the urge to go off on a tangent about Native American stuff. Strat.
Yeah. So my follow-on related point was, it's been long enough since the NU5 development and release process that there are people who have since moved on to other ecosystems, and it would be worthwhile reaching out to them to see if they are interested in attending any of these particular retrospectives to be able to give input and feedback. It would be helpful for them, I expect, if we have a more defined, like, on this, this particular call, we'll be discussing this particular subtopic and focusing there, yada yada, versus this one we'll be discussing more general things, so that they have the ability to sort of attend, find time if possible to attend the ones that they're interested in giving feedback on.
Yeah, agreed. I can think of at least 2 people. Maybe again, this document, we want to put together a list of people to invite along.
Which makes it even more important that we're careful with sticking to the scopes of what we're discussing in each of those subsections, so that we're making use of their time if they do turn up.
Agreed. Anything else on the scheduling? Do we think it's safe to try having the first having the first NU5 retrospective session in 4 weeks' time? And any objections to that, or does anybody think it's not safe to try? And then we can see how it goes.
Just going to check my calendar. I'm pretty sure I'm free then.
It'll be the beginning of. Sorry, it's the 30th of November.
Sorry, so that's in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 2 weeks is the earlier time slot, and then 2 weeks after that, this late time slot again.
I may be slightly jet lagged as I get into London the day before, but it's not the day of, so.
I do have a Transcribe organizing meeting that day, but that's fine. It doesn't clash.
You have a what, sorry?
Transcribe organizing meeting for next year.
Okay, let's.
I have the T-shirt. See, it says
all my pictures are little postage stamp sized.
Yeah, it says Transcribe Manchester.
Cool. Okay, let's give that a try, and then let's talk about what topics do we want to cover. So I've come up with timeline, and I guess that blends a little bit into the sort of network upgrade process as well. Scope, which also again blends in with the process, and I think it's worth doing a sandblast post-mortem. And I'm conscious that there are 2 aspects to this. Number 1, the sort of the technical thing, and then number 2, what are what lessons can be learned for future network upgrades? Does anybody have any comments? Anybody have other suggestions for stuff we should discuss? Tior.
So, one of the things that happened, I guess I wanted to talk about how we change timelines, but maybe that's included in, because it was kind of the original timeline and then there were multiple amended timelines, but maybe we can discuss that as part of the timeline item. I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is that some of the zips we have are explicitly targeted at the for NU6, or explicitly targeted at the halving. So yeah, maybe a topic to cover kind of external constraints would be useful, because I don't know what there was for NU5, but there'll definitely be for NU6.
Well, there was for Canopy as well, that was constrained to be on the previous halving. And yeah, that was a little bit fraught as a result, if I remember.
Yeah. And while there wasn't directly a block height constraint there. There were other external constraints that affected things. So yeah, it's worth having a topic for that.
Cool. I've added that to the list of topics in our little embryonic document. So far we've got timeline, scope, external constraints, sandblast, postmortem, and meta / cross-discipline issues.
So for the scope of the sandblast postmortem, we can talk about the specific sandblasting attack, but I think we also need to talk more generally about our response to long-running attacks, and sort of to what extent should we drop everything and respond? To what extent should we try to respond in parallel with other work? Things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, there's also a question of who is responsible for responding to attacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that I think was a significant part of the problem in the response to the sandblasting was, that question did not and does not currently have an answer.
Sure.
And the future answer may be different to the past answer. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So I think as part of the sandblasting, it would be helpful to talk about who's responsible for monitoring the network as well, because that's a separate thing to, once we know there's an attack, what do we do about it and who's responsible? Because I think, that's a helpful discussion point.
And that's a topic I would love to have the Equilibrium folks join for. So they are pretty much the closest thing we have to a network monitoring team at the moment. Strat.
2 points here. Firstly, I wonder if maybe it is worth maybe this is just a meta topic for the meta thing, but like there's a distinction between it's sort of cross a couple things. You have a specific sandblast postmortem, which is not an NU5 retrospective. Like this is really outside of the retrospective for NU5. But then we separately have the effect of that on NU5, which sort of cuts into it touches on external constraints and sort of more of a meta issue, but also like maybe like it sort of gets a bit of what I think Darren said before, like, how do we respond to that, and how does the responding to something like that interact with other things?
I mean, technically, sorry, carry on.
I don't know the best way to frame that, and like how much time we're going to end up. Like, I don't want to take. The reason I'm saying this is I don't want to take away from doing a good postmortem on the sandblasting issue by tying it into NU5. I think we should. I
agree. I think those should be completely separate, actually, because although they did interact,
that's why I'm saying I think we should have that sandblasting postmortem on its own, but then have it at a point where we can then take what we discuss from that and feed it into the NU5 retrospective.
So you're suggesting having it before...
So maybe as long as we've had it before the meta meeting, then maybe that's sufficient.
Well, what if we schedule the sandblast postmortem first?
I mean, that would almost probably be easier because it's the more recent one, and we probably have more of it in our working memory.
I'd be fine with that.
One thing I think it's important to talk about is, obviously we have the benefit of hindsight, but going forward, what should we do as part of our network upgrade process to avoid similar situations in the future. So for example, like we do things like if we have new crypto, we need to have a security proof, etc.
I mean, we did have a security analysis for Orchard. So were you meaning to tie that into the sandblasting issue? Because we, I think, had not done a worst case analysis of denial of service attacks. So
I think, yeah, that's what I'm
okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that a problem with Orchard causes sandblast. I'm using the fact that when we're rolling out new crypto, we require a security proof. What should we, are there other similar requirements that we should apply? Or should we have a red team that comes in and deliberately looks at both the current and future protocol and say, right, actually, there's this massive issue that you've either haven't recognized or have underestimated. There's no answer to this. It's just a topic. It's a topic of discussion that I think it's important to discuss. Strat.
So continuing on my, I think I said I had two things. I might actually mean three. The second one was what? What was it? I'll put it aside because I can't quite remember. The third thing is this is sort of scope, but it's not quite scope. Sort of like I feel like there's probably a fair bit to look at in terms of retrospecting on the implementation. And like the process for like it has some interactions with scope in terms of like, how emergent complexity and things was discovered and handled. But there were also like there are probably things that we could talk about in the actual engineering process of like what was a big complex feature, that we can probably elucidate some insights for going forward for future like large cross-cutting engineering improvements, or even just thinking in terms of like how like some of the stuff that Kedit was mentioning earlier about like how these larger scale changes interact with the rest of the protocol and how deployment of those and testing of those interact with the rest of the protocol, in light of other teams doing other things in the same some of the code bases. So there's maybe there's enough there that deserves its own topic. I'm not quite sure. And what was the second thing again? I can't remember. I'll see if I remember.
So there's a difference between a retrospective and a planning for future upgrades, and we seem to be conflating those. And I'm a bit concerned that if we do, then we will not have enough time in the scheduled meetings to do a thorough job of the NU5 retrospective per se.
Agreed. I think we need to separate out the sort of post-mortem approach versus and then identifying lessons, and then there's identifying lessons learned that we can then carry through into future planning.
I mean, identifying lessons is always a part of a retrospective or an effective retrospective, but that is a different thing than planning future upgrades.
Just to be clear, that's not what I was saying, Dara.
So no, I didn't. It wasn't just what you were saying. It was the thread of the conversation.
It sounded like a response to what I just said.
No, not directly.
Okay. Yeah, in the case of my one, like what I'm thinking of there is like I was referring to Kedit, which is obviously about future planning, but like there's stuff I'm sure there are things that we will think of if we're sitting down having a discussion about that that would have gone better had we the benefit of hindsight that we now do.
Let me just switch my share to show you what I've got so far. So we have sandblast, postmortem, specifics of the attack, a response along one of the attacks, who's responsible for responding to attacks, monitoring the network, how to avoid, I can't remember if I was typing this or Strad, you were typing this, lost our thread. Go ahead, Strad.
I've just remembered my point. So your how to avoid was about how to identify. I would phrase it as, how could we have more easily identified this as being a potential problem or something like that, which is what security proofs are trying to do, is is this something we could have done there, I guess. But maybe relatedly, the thing I was trying to remember was how we deal with tech debt. Because there's definitely an element of that for the sandblast and postmortem. So we could also bundle that in with other tech debt approaches as well if we want to.
Yeah. Yeah, tech debt is it's a big one, isn't it? Okay, so how to avoid similar issues in the future. That links to the tech debt discussion. Do we have something like a red team as a specify that as an example? We want to talk about the timeline because I think timeline. I mean, obviously, the foundation engineers were working to add NU5 to Zebra, and the shifting timeline made things a little bit difficult there. But I think as we go forward with a more multipolar ecosystem, we're going to need to have a more a timeline, I think, that's more consensus formed, I guess, rather than simply one organization saying, right, this is what's going to happen. Scope and complexity, and as Strad alluded to, emergent complexity. How we deal with tech debt, external constraints, and I feel like external constraints may end up cropping up in different places. And then meta or cross-discipline issues, including the effects of the sandblast attack on NU5.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about in terms of complexity budgets, because obviously people are going to have different opinions on what complexity is actually reasonable, and we have been extremely ambitious in a lot of previous upgrades. Yeah.
Sure.
I think with scope, it might also help to distinguish pre-activation and post-activation work, because I think that was another part of the scope of NU5 that was tricky. There were a lot of things that needed to be done before activation, and then there were other things that were follow-ups mainly from the ECC side that effectively extended the network upgrade for them, but not much at all for the Zebra team because of our featured set. So distinguishing those would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that was the main interaction of the sandblasting attack on NU5, derailing the work that we would otherwise have done to support Orchard after the upgrade.
We are coming up to time, and I want to be respectful of people's schedules. I feel like we've done a good first pass at this, and I'm sure that it'll shift and evolve. You all have the links to this, so feel free to edit, put in comments and suggestions and whatnot. But let's leave it there for now. The only other topic that was on the schedule, if I can figure out where my presentation is gone. Was to talk about NU6 planning, but we kind of touched a bit on that, I think, sufficiently earlier when we were talking with John, and you know, as a you know, I think we all agree that it's important to do the retrospective and to be able to take the lessons that we learned from that and go into going into the planning process for NU6. Derek.
So Paku asked on the chat who will facilitate the meetings.
Would someone like to volunteer? Or shall I, nominate someone?
I volunteer to take notes.
Okay. Any volunteers to facilitate? Tior?
I'm happy to facilitate, but I think it'd be good to have multiple facilitators. So if there's a topic that I want to, you know, speak about, then we can kind of swap out. But yeah, in any case, I'm happy to help.
Cool. Thank you. Let's start off with Tior. Well, actually, the first topic is going to be Sandblast. Dara, I suspect that you may be more interested in participating in that discussion than in note taking. So
that's a very good point. Yeah.
So I can do
I'm going to have
for
opinions regardless, but I can type at the same time as.
I guess also
having opinions.
We're all forgetting that that we do have a note taker who attends these meetings and then uploads notes to GitHub.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so we don't necessarily need someone who's attending to.
Yeah.
Well, attending as a participant to do that.
So yeah, and obviously they are recorded as well, so we are able to go back if necessary to check on things. Cool. I think the key thing that's going to come out of these are agreed points or agreed you know, future action items or recommendations or something, and those I think will hopefully be relatively succinct. Fingers crossed. Okay,
yeah,
like I said,
I think there's another kind of notes that you take during a retrospective, which are sort of more edited conclusions rather than a transcript of what was said. So I think we do need to. We can probably all cooperate on writing those.
Okay, let's so like I said, we discussed the a little bit of network upgrade planning earlier when John from Kedit was on, so I don't think we need to do that again. So any other business? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you all. 2 minutes over. Next Arborist call will be a regular call, so no retro on the 16th of November in the earlier time slot. So thank you all.
Thank you.